Hello and welcome to this installment of GSA's Small Business GWAC Training Series. This acquisition training titled Nuts and Bolts is provided as a resource to assist small business GWAC stakeholders in making the most of small business GWACs. My name is Matt Verhulst. I'm the Contracts Branch Chief with Acquisition Operations of GSA's Integrated Technology Services located in Kansas City, Missouri. I've been with the organization and the team surrounding these contracts since its inception in the late 90s. This team has awarded 6 small business GWACs in that time and has also administered an additional one for a total of 7 small business GWACs. The information provided within this presentation is drawn from our experiences and observations and is an overview. Each GWAC has its own terms and conditions, plus an associated ordering guide on its respective website with which each industry partner or client should be familiar prior to using any of the GWACs. That said, the team supporting the GWACs prides itself on its availability and responsiveness to customers. So I encourage you to contact that team at any time, for which information is provided on the last slide if you have any questions or just want to visit about using these contracts to their maximum. The training outline for today. First, we'll talk about solicitation, contract scope, about the use of the term industry partners, a little bit about labor categories under the contracts, which are the line items. Talk about ordering as a theme, as a topic, about socioeconomic credit, and also, to wrap it up, about GWAC program support. So, solicitation, what is that? That's an interesting term. Solicitation means that the government, in this case, will, through a mechanism such as a request for proposals or request for quotation, perhaps, although it might not be considered solicitation, publicize, through some mechanism, its requirements for competition. Typically, solicitations are open for a defined period of time. Offerors respond to those with proposals. Proposals are then taken in, accounted for, reviewed, considered, and evaluated by the government through what we would call a best value process. And also, no additional contractors in terms of the solicitation for the GWACs themselves, the award of the initial contracts, are added after solicitation closes. So that's a little bit about solicitation for status on the contract and solicitation as a general term of art as well. Contract scope. And we're really talking about the scope of the GWACs, but we can talk about scope in the abstract as well. Scope for the GWACs. They are information technology contracts. They focus on information technology services. So that means they support information technology services, but also, because these contracts are flexible, they also support information technology-based solutions, wherein other things besides services can be integrated, provided the principal purpose of work under the contracts for task orders focus on information technology services. Again, they do allow for integration of other things such as hardware, software, and of course, even non-IT services, provided, again, IT services remain the principal purpose of task order work. GWACs themselves are for use by federal agencies. It's the federal customer that is authorized as users for contracts. Each of the contracts has an authorized user base and explains more about that within the contract's terms and conditions. GWACs also offer worldwide coverage. I would refer you to the terms and conditions for each contract, each GWAC itself, for how it implements worldwide contract coverage. Industry partners on the GWACs may be thought of as highly qualified. Of course, industry partners are put through a rigorous evaluation process just to win an initial spot on the contract, and then for business under the contract, for those task orders that agencies bring as opportunities to the contracts, There's another round of competition. So you can see there's a rigorous competitive process. There is one exception to the second round of competition, and that is under the 8A program for the small business GWACs called 8A Stars or 8A Stars 2. There's a special statutory exception for transactions up to $4 million where it could go what we call on a directed basis to an industry partner of a customer's choice. But the point here is that industry partners are highly qualified. They go through competition just to win an initial berth on the contract. That means, to a large extent, they've been vetted as the best in the competition and that they're capable of performing the requirements on the contract within the contract scope. Now, there is a competitive standard that applies for opportunities that are brought by federal customers to these contracts. That competitive standard that allows industry partners that possess standing within the scope area for that requirement is called the Fair Opportunity to be Considered standard. Without getting too technical, that means they should get a fair shake to compete for that requirement. More explanation is provided along the fair opportunity subject for the fair opportunity subject in the contract and in their associated ordering guides. Also, industry partners to a large extent determine their own success on the contract by their efforts to bring business to the table, by their ability to respond to competition announcements, solicitations for task orders, and in their ability to develop those mission solutions and to complete them for customers. The contracts all have a suite, and they're not always the same across the different small business GWACs. Each may have a little bit of a different emphasis of labor categories. So pre-priced labor categories may be found on the small business contracts. Those pre-priced labor categories were established by the government. That standardization across all the industry partners on a given GWAC is what we consider to be one of the value adds for these contracts. That allows a customer agency considering use of the contract to potentially develop a government estimate based upon that information. It's also the understanding that through the use of competition at task order level, the pricing for those labor categories when they are directly adopted into task orders may often be improved upon. All offerors proposing contract pricing based upon those uniform categories do offer customer agencies what we call a basis for apples-to-apples comparison. Increasing the comparison value between the different industry partners for customer agencies is a very useful thing that they value. Ordering procedures. Here's where the term fair opportunity comes up in this presentation. Even though I mentioned it before, I thought it was vital to do so. Fair opportunity is also just the short version of what we call fair opportunity to be considered. There's a FAR, which is Federal Acquisition Regulation, reference for you to look at, to delve into if you would. It's FAR 16505. FAR 16505 addresses the requirements of the Federal Acquisition Regulations for ordering under these contracts and would be vital for both industry partners and customer agencies to consider and to read, not just once, probably twice, to be fully familiar with its requirements. As the slide indicates, within a given contract, when a requirement is offered to that contract for competition, the Fair Opportunity Standard applies to all requirements except those under 8A Stars or 8A Stars 2 up to $4 million. Fair opportunity to be considered has a fairly rigorous textbook definition, but again, the general impression about fair opportunity to be considered that I want to leave with the audience of this presentation is that it means every industry partner who is identified in the contract as able to compete for a given requirement is given a fair shake to do so under the rules that are explained in FAR 16505. It's a fairly simple thing conceptually, but there are certain specific things that ordering contracting officers, those are the contracting officers that compete requirements under the contract have to follow, and we provide training from GSA to help them become familiar with those requirements. Ordering authority under the Small Business GWAC, as I previously mentioned, is for federal government entities. And the parties that use the contract and actually award those task orders, we call them ordering contracting officers. They have to be warranted federal contracting officers, and one of the things that we do to help make sure that they have the tools and information to properly use the contracts and use them successfully to fulfill their mission needs is GSA provides them upfront training on the proper use of the contracts. And then once they have that upfront training in place, GSA issues them a Delegation of Procurement Authority, or DPA. We think that's vital. It helps on the quality assurance side of things, and if we take care of that kind of business up front, we find that people have a significantly enhanced experience in the administration phase of these task orders. And that also helps to encourage repeat business, which industry, I believe, would be interested in. Ordering options. There are two terms of art on this slide important to know. The first one is called direct acquisition. The second one, assisted acquisition. So direct acquisition is when a customer agency, in this case a federal agency, has a requirement and then uses its own internal contracting folk to award and administer that requirement. Very straightforward. It's an agency contracting for its own requirements. Assisted acquisition, though, is an interesting topic. Assisted acquisition is where one agency has a requirement that turns to another agency's contracting folks to compete, award, and administer, typically, that requirement and then close it out. So please understand the use of the terms direct acquisition and assisted acquisition. They're very prevalent in the GWAC and interagency contracting areas. Contract types. The types of contracts, or let's say task orders, that are available under the Small Business GWACs include fixed price, which is the preferred contracting type for task orders. All of the Small Business GWACs support time and materials and labor hour terms. And then Alliance Small Business goes even further and supports cost reimbursement contracting. One of the hallmarks of the Small Business GWACs, one of the primary drivers that customers associate with them, is the socioeconomic credit. When you think about the names of the Small Business GWACs, you've got 8A Stars, 8A Stars 2, the VETS GWAC, and you've got Alliance Small Business. When you listen to those names, when you think about that, you can easily get to the fact that each is associated with a category of small business. And so when the contracts were initially set up, they were awarded to contractors having that status. That's important. So one of the things that flows from that is that small business socioeconomic credit may be obtained through the use of these contracts. And there's information about how that credit may be obtained and how to report that credit in association with task orders in the respective contract terms and conditions and in their ordering guides. I mentioned that a couple of times on purpose. So that socioeconomic credit, when earned, may be applied to an agency's procurement preference goals. And that's something that many agencies are highly engaged in trying to achieve. Also, 8A credit itself, when you use the 8A Stars or 8A Stars 2 GWAC, is the principal point on those contracts and may be earned through their use. Programmatic support. We call that programmatic support, as far as what's listed on this slide, because there is a program of support within GSA invested in helping industry and in helping customers successfully use these contracts. One of those aspects of support is a scope compatibility review. That is a process wherein if a federal customer or potential customer has a requirement and they are thinking about the use of the Small Business GWACs and they want to approach somebody and say, hey, is this a good fit for the contract or is it not? We here in the small business GWAC team supporting the contracts will take that potential opportunity in. We have an intake process for that. There's a form that gets filled out, and we typically ask for a copy of the work statement to be sent. And on a very quick turnaround basis, just a couple of days typically, we'll look at that. We'll determine whether or not that opportunity is a good fit or not, and then we'll turn around a written response. That written response is so key and vital and appreciated, we think, by the federal customer because they get what they need for their records to say, hey, we checked. It is a good fit. We are confident we can use this and get our mission fulfilled. So that's a very proactive stance we've taken and encouraged the use of that. We also decided a few years ago that not only would we support the stakeholders of the contracts through the scope compatibility review, we would also, in support of small businesses, work with customers that had an opportunity and wanted to explore whether or not the industry partners on the contract currently had the assets available at that time to fulfill the mission objectives. This wasn't a situation where they had a concern necessarily about the scope of the contract, but they wanted to actively check in almost real time if they submitted the opportunity to the contract as a task order solicitation, would there be competition for that requirement based upon the resources available within the industry partners teams at that time. And so what we will do under this capabilities statement request process is we'll take in a requirements document. We'll help the customer agency turn that into an RFI and collect capabilities statements from industry partners, collate them, package them up, and return them in a very organized manner to the customer agency with the interest, with the intent of helping win their business to the contract for industry partners. So that's something we actively engage in and we find to be well received. Also, not only do we help on the front end of task orders in trying to win the business, we are there to consult with customer agencies as they administer and work through the task order administration, whether it be a consultation about how to do a past performance report under a task order, or whether it be a consultation on what to do in this situation or that situation. We're there. We're reachable. We're approachable. Consistently over the years, one of the hallmarks of our organization has been the responsiveness, the fact that when you try to reach out to us, we do get back with you. We pride ourselves in that, and we'll continue that customer service. Training, not only through the use of these presentations, which we're calling the boot camps, but also through teleconferences or perhaps on-site training at certain events. We're also very actively engaged as a team supporting these contracts through the use of training. And of course, in the contracts, there are certain requirements for what we call program management meetings or just program meetings, periodic meetings that we have with industry to talk about important items of interest that we share at given points in each contract's life cycle. This last slide contains information about the Small Business GWAC Center, and it gives contact information for both the website and the email address for each respective Small Business GWAC, and it provides you the general phone number for client support. That's a toll-free number that you can use to reach out to us if you so choose. You know, while this concludes the overview of the nuts and bolts presentation of the bootcamp series, it's hoped that the content from today will be helpful to us all as you in industry and customers work to maximize the potential of small business GWACs. I want to emphasize as a takeaway that your GSA team understands that only by our collaboration and investment and engagement can we help assure our mutual success. We understand that that is key and work in partnership to that end. With that in mind, please remember, we stand ready here in GSA to facilitate appropriate and regular use of these contract vehicles through customer-focused support.